All right, and so hello everyone, and welcome to another expert session number 93. And our guest today is Alessandro De Zanche. So before I move on, I proceed. I will just say thanks to our sponsor, VTEX, the e-commerce platform powering global retail experiences, and Airmeet, global virtual and hybrid events. So just a short bio about our expert, this week's expert. Alessandro De Zanche is a senior media and monetization advisor with more than 20 years of experience working with global publishers, platforms, and telcos. His background includes senior roles and advisory work with organizations such as News Corp, Yahoo, and Telefonica. Alessandro has spent his career helping media businesses adapt as distribution, discovery, and monetization models shifted from own channels to platform-driven ecosystem. And joining me today as co-host, Davi Alves, who's an executive advisor, business angel, board professional, and tech and AI investor. He's a former group CIO at Sonai with deep experience across strategy, governance, transformation, business growth, customer centricity, e-commerce, and digital platforms. David brings a systems level perspective to this conversation, shaped by years of operating at scale, working with boards, and advising companies navigating media, tech, and commerce convergence. So I always start this weekly conversations with a controversial question, Alessandro. Actually, that's something we've implemented after our conversation last year. It's been 1 year since we recorded our first conversation. So let's start with the controversial question for you. Is legacy media actually being disrupted, or has it simply failed to accept that it's becoming part of the commerce and marketplace infrastructure?
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Secondly, thank you for asking a controversial question. So it's not always me having to give a controversial answer. So this time we switched the roles. And I think that, yes, but first, I would like to focus on what is legacy media, because I think that legacy media is a subjective term, and I think that it's also for their own fault, but traditional media owners haven't done much to remove that kind of label that is seen as something like old, not very advanced. I think that the future of quality content will never die, despite what we hear about generative AI. Um, the challenge is the channel. How do we have quality content reaching the audience through channels and ways that the audience is actually preferring and expecting? So a lot of the issues start from this legacy media kind of label and how traditional media sees themselves. And I believe that they're still fighting, many, not all of them, obviously, are still fighting against an unstoppable tide. This tide is AI. It's changing the future. They're spending a lot of energy in complaining or fighting and trying to maintain old models, while I think they should focus their energies on a new way. It is a new way for them, but I think it should have been the old way too, which is becoming consumer brands, thinking and acting like consumer brands, where the audience is their client number one, is their consumer, and the advertiser is number two, because without an audience, you don't have an advertiser. And that's that misunderstanding, that inversion of the order, is also an element that has caused the situation where they are today, or let's say the struggle that they've been facing for a few years now, and now is accelerating also.
Do you think?
And please go
So,
ahead.
do you think the media as a business as a whole is not deconstructing into information in one end, entertainment in another end, and all the other ones? And each one of these new businesses, let's say, this part of the old media, um, is actually starting to charge the real customer, so being less dependent on the advertisers. And so this legacy media that tries to encompass all the different streams becomes really much harder to manage. It's a bit transatlantic when you are seeing fast boats crossing over, but just
Yeah, I agree, and there is an issue with it, the issue, which is making assumptions. On one side, I think that only media companies with unique content will
so,
thrive. On the other hand, it's very dangerous to assume that your audience likes this versus that. That's an assumption, that there is the need of a shift in the approach. So being audience centric is first and foremost understanding what your audience needs and what your audience is looking for. So yes, potentially information, entertainment, etc., could be uncoupled. But it all depends on what the audience wants. So I don't see it as a it shouldn't be an assumption. It should come from the audience, and the audience different media companies have got different types of audiences, and what works for one doesn't work for the other. So that's another dangerous approach that we see quite frequently, applying blueprints. Being audience centric means being unique, and providing your audience. Obviously, it's mutual. Your audience is attracted to you because of your uniqueness, but you also need to keep in mind what their preferences are.
Ale, taking using what you said and what Davi also asked as a segue, more like as a reflection here on what's happened within Evolve, uh, like since the first time we spoke, a year exactly, 1 year ago. I really believe that what one of the challenges that, let's say, legacy or traditional media faces is, again, number one, you mentioned advertisers. So the consumer or the audience has never been their focus. Like they focus on
Well,
the
in the
clicks.
digital world.
Well, but then how we okay then
Yeah, I mean,
what
they when they approached, when digital disrupted their old way of thinking.
Precise. We are going through a disruption because then you have podcasts. It virtually costs nothing to turn on your camera, and if people like you, and if you build an audience, as you know, with your perspective, which is what I think a lot of companies they lack. It's they lack the perspective, they lack the courage because of an old way of probably how the world used to work before, you know. And today, if you come up with a perspective and if you're honest about it, then over time you can start building like what we are doing, a community. In the beginning it wasn't obvious, but now I think we found our audience and promise. Like we're talking to a senior audience, like senior professionals in a career transition, And from there, we were just to give you we were pitching companies in the first place. We were talking to companies because our thesis was, let's create a community where companies can partner with other companies in international markets. But companies, they don't like necessarily to bet on a vision because there was no clear ROI. In the meantime, we noticed a pattern of senior professionals approaching us and saying, hey, what you guys are doing is very interesting. Then we started learning more about communities and the community business model and how could we productize our community. And it's really interesting what happened from in the past year, because now we have an actual community with paid members, a club. And I think that's one of the things, like traditional media, they become so enslaved and so dependent on advertisers. We need to serve our members. We need to make sure that our members, they are well served, so we are less reliant on sponsorship, on brand deals. Because in our understanding, speaking on behalf of Evolve and as Evolve, when we do a dinner, for example, we are not allowing sponsors to speak on stage. That's a clear rule we have. Like, sponsors, they can bring the customers. We're going to place them on a table where they're sitting with a potential client, but they're not going on stage to speak, because what we notice is that just because you get a few drinks and wines and GNTs and whatever bullshit that is, like they treat you as they treat anyone who's there. That's the traditional way of thinking. In our case, like in the e-commerce industry case, like people they've been serving drinks, and then you have to hear a pitch. In our case, we want Alessandro to come and tell his story on his career, on legacy, and whatever. And you're the star, and then we're creating an environment where conversations are happening. And I think the same is happening in the world of digital and media. So I'm just rambling here, but just to
Yeah,
give you
no. But you touched something that it's crucial, and I think is the biggest obstacle for self-sustainability of traditional media, which is alignment of objectives and alignment of incentives. There are too many different silos and different teams and groups within media companies that are not aligned on objectives first and not rewarded by aligned incentives. So, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault if they are passed down with partial goals and very narrow incentives. So that's what I see. That's the biggest obstacle, I think. Even before, you can't approach AI, you can't transform yourself if you don't fix the foundations and the way you think. And I see that what is frustrating to me is that the C-suites, the CEOs, the CROs, the COOs get it. They understand. You hear them in panels on stage. They get what they need, but it's not passed down to their entire organizations. So you see that kind of a fault line between the top management and the rest of the company. And that creates a lot of issues. And that's why you have the subscription team or the memberships teams clashing against bad user experience, even the acquisition team having different incentives than the retention team. So it's that is the main problem, I think. But it does not just for traditional media. I think any company producing content and having an audience. And content
Very
could be
interesting.
video games, could be
Mhm.
could be movies, could be sports games, could be anything.
No, for sure. I think it's so interesting. Like I'm a big podcast consumer, more so than books. I'm trying to go back to the physical books, but I'm a big podcast and audiobook guy. And one podcast I started consuming maybe a year ago, and Gustavo is always making fun of me, is the PBD podcast, because I think it's interesting in the US. Not sure if you know them. They're a bit more conservative, but I like seeing how this new community business models they operate. So PBD, he's very clear about his promise and the type of audience that he wants to talk to, which are small business owners or business owners, entrepreneurs. And then he's always saying, hey, in order not to be dependent on the Saudi world and big money and operate like traditional and legacy media has always operated, I need to sell merch. I need to sell to have these strategic collaborations. They have their own club, which I find it interesting because in the end, you will always have a boss. But do you want your boss dictating what you want to say in terms of politics, or you're serving an audience who kind of believe in your perspective, or you're more free? I mean, in the end, you're not necessarily free. You always have some sort of superior out there. But I like his perspective. So he has that's how he his perspective on his freedom, how he how they built their media company and freedom in that sense. So they're not dependent on corporate money and or big political groups, and I find that fascinating. Not sure what's your take, and Davi as well, please.
Yeah,
David, you.
it's the deconstructing of the business as a
Mhm.
whole. It's if you are a very good reporter or interviewer, you can have your own podcast. You can monetize it. You can actually be focused on your end customer, on your listener, and then you'll treat advertising as a side revenue on top revenue, not as your key customer, as media and Alessandro mentioned it a while ago used to do. So
Mhm.
this diversifying of the media, you have the same with
Mhm.
entertainment. You are a very good humorist. You can have your own podcast. You can have your own YouTube channel, etc., etc., and this drives you somewhere else. You have Netflix or HBO whatsoever that focus on the on entertainment as movies and serials and much of
Mhm.
and so they are focused on part of the big legacy media streams and not on the main ones, and that is deconstructing. There will be room for a marketplace somewhere in the middle where you
Mhm.
actually can pick up and be advised which podcasts to follow, which YouTubers to follow, which uh, uh, video streaming to follow in order to see what you want. Now we lose loads of time probably watching and seeing stuff that we don't want. So there will be
For sure.
room for curation somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
AI will help a lot in that, but I believe that we are still deconstructing. So my question to
Mhm.
Alessandro was, how can one advise the executive boards of the media of current media companies in order for them to have a plan? Because deconstructing themselves is not something easy for them to foresee and to execute.
Absolutely, and I think that what I mentioned earlier, audience centricity is the key. So you if you want to if you are trying to please everyone, you please no one. So
Mhm.
you need to be very unique and have this two-way conversation, and constant feedback loop with your audience. It will become increasingly difficult with generative AI. The noise is skyrocketing, And this is also why, besides audience centricity, and not besides, but it's part of it, it will be more crucial than ever the concept of trust. So this kind of engagement with the audience. And for media, zero-click search is causing a lot of disruption, but I think it's directly proportional with how good the job has been done in the past. So you haven't been done a good job in building your connection with the audience. You'll probably, and you are being focusing on transient audiences, just passersby, without creating loyalty, then you're probably dealt with an almost mortal blow right now. So blaming zero-click search, it's just a fig leaf. Is just covering or diverting the attention from the bad job you have done in the past to a change in the world, in the industry, in the internet, in the way we consume content. So that's crucial. So it becomes 100 times more important how you retain those audiences that are visiting you directly. So if you instead, well, that's my usual high-level, superficial suggestion to media owners. Instead of wasting energies trying to fight AI and AI search, you should focus on how you create impeccable, unique experiences for the audiences that are visiting you directly, creating bonds and trying to increase that segment. And that's not done via rubbish content recommendation widgets that are or bad user experience through ads disrupting the content consumption, and we could go on and on. So it's a very important shift that needs to happen. And as I said earlier, media owners need to think and act like consumer brands.
Alessandro, in this 1 year since our last conversation, there's probably a lot of AI, but I'm interested in what happened in your practice, in your career there, and maybe if you could share like some interesting business models that you've seen emerging, yeah, in your day-to-day life. I'm really interested in that.
Well, in my day-to-day life, on a personal level, I've been working more with non-media companies, but non-media companies that are becoming media companies. What I mean is a lot of verticals are becoming media. Entertainment organizations and even artists are becoming media companies. Sports organizations are becoming media companies. So a lot is becoming media, and I think they again, what I've focused on is on the concept that the world is changing, but you need to lead with uniqueness. That's and by the way, it has been the same. It's not that just because we have AI now, that now we have to go through like uniqueness. That's the same that I've been saying for the last 15 years. It's just that with these shifts and the pressure of AI, finally a lot of companies start to realize that actually there is no alternative.
Super. And I hear you. In Brazil, I think we're one of the countries that consume most social media. So it's Brazil, I think Philippines, like at least Instagram. I was looking at the data. Brazil is a heavy consumer, and therefore you see a lot of what you're saying. For I think it's very normal to see someone who has an average audience or maybe a big audience to become influencers themselves. Pardon, to start their own product line, and from there, because they have the audience and they have, I would say, audience, not even a community, but they have the attention, right? And from that attention, they are monetizing through multiple avenues. And this has been happening in Brazil for quite a bit, quite some time now. But perhaps in Europe, this is something newer, maybe. Um, and the other thing is like taking that to perhaps my next reflection is going back to traditional media. I think I look at traditional media as like roads, infrastructure. So nothing is lost. They built something, they built distribution. But now, so you have these emerging players, which is very fragmented. You have a couple of sports team in certain verticals. You have beauty artists, and then you have singers, and then you have rappers, and then you and whatnot. You have so specific verticals of people who have specific audiences. And so, would it make sense for a media channel to start saying, okay, this is fragmented, we have distribution, in terms of monetization, in terms of what they built, how do you see that? What's the new business models that this like CNNs of the world or whatever, this massive conglomerates, they have distribution, they have attention, but I find it like take the elections of not saying whether you like it or not, it's just a fact. Donald Trump was on podcasts. So he understood the attention economy. He understood where the attention was. And Kamala failed to do that, in my opinion. So if you understand that the attention is going into other avenues, then you have to be there. And then at the same time, trying to connect that to this legacy media and distribution that they already have and package that into new business models. Not sure if it's too confusing what I'm trying to say, but
No, David, do you want to go first?
No, no, Alessandro, please.
Okay, that's perfect. Well, I think that first of all, attention is in the content, is not on the channel. Obviously, habits shift, and so people are more on a channel versus the other channel, and that's challenge. I think that individual contributor, podcaster, or big media groups, obviously different costs, completely different setups, different challenges. But at the end of the day, what the audience needs is quality content and trusting. And that doesn't mean at an absolute level, but I think that sooner or later, if you have integrity, whatever is your opinion, if you have integrity, the audience will reward it. So, as I said, I think content will never die. Is the channel and where the audiences are, and that
Yeah,
goes back to audience centricity and the need to listen to your audience rather than making assumptions. And that's a problem that traditional media had. They're stuck in their ivory tower, let's say, and rather than seeing themselves as an agile, dynamic voice that will use different channels depending on where the audience is.
and
Because it's not that necessarily in 5 years time the podcasters of today, those that have all that huge following, still be there if they cannot evolve. So it's always a continuous evolution that needs to be.
Mhm.
It's I when people ask me what do you do, and I think this applies to anybody. I say I'm a
Mhm.
surfer, so I try to surf the wave, and that's what I think. Also, it's valid for media companies.
Yeah, I was going to say that if we consider the problem you mentioned about media companies losing focus on their audience and focusing too
Mhm.
much on their advertisers, I think it's
Absolutely.
happening the same when you look at podcasters sometimes, but especially
Mhm.
in Instagram or even on some other, you see that the personas there are actually focusing too much on the advertiser, and they will be losing their audience in the future. So when that shift happens, when they stop caring and building for their audience and start building for revenues coming from advertisers, it's the beginning of the end, as someone would say.
Sure. And just to clarify, when I said I'm a surfer, and this should be the approach also of media companies, it doesn't mean zigzagging.
No, no,
And
no. It means
in order to be a surfer, you need to have a very, very strong athletic core. You need to train a lot to have a strong preparation, strong muscles, and strong other skills. So because the thing is,
and being
if we
attentive
zigzag,
to the next wave and being attentive to the waves that are coming. Very attentive.
absolutely,
So
absolutely, and because otherwise, I call it the perpetual cycle of emergency. What happens is you focus on the short term. Focusing on the short term leaves you vulnerable. Then you have anything that can happen, like a war, a pandemic, financial crisis, you name it. It will force you to other short term decisions, and it will leave you even more vulnerable. It's a constant cycle of patches and fixes that never really push you towards self-sustainability.
Brilliant. Listen, we are on 32 minutes. I have one question to you both, but I would love if the audience, Alessandro, you told me once that I still have that snippet. You rather to have two people in a room paying full attention to what you have to say than, a massive audience. Today we have nine, so that's very nice. And they're joining from all over the world. And what I like to ask them is to prepare the questions. We have Erin. She was joining from Canada, and she's a partner specialist. She's working for a company that is doing communities. It's called Mighty Networks. Amazing. We have the lady from Portugal. Sorry, Gabriela. Gabriela, she works with marketplaces. And I would love if they could join us and ask their questions. But the question I have both for you, Davi, and Alessandro, is in regards to, yeah, what breaks first when media companies are trying to monetize through commerce, and where do you think the governance and incentives usually fail? Because you have all the beautiful stories, but in the end, I really like your point about incentives, Alessandro. I used to work for a massive commerce platform, and the CEO of this digital commerce platform, would say that retailers also they have this problem with bonuses and how they pay commission. So these incentives are very, very perverse because, well, they benefit the leaders, and it cascades down. But in the end, it's an individual incentive, and not thinking about the future of the organization. So I think incentives is key in this discussion. But going back, what makes or break when companies try to monetize media, and where do governance and incentives usually fail?
David, do
Perhaps,
you want me to
yeah.
go?
yeah,
You to
I think you said it all. There is a lack of incentives and aligned incentives, or incentives for alignment more than aligned incentives, because most of the companies have their bottom line and their turnover as an overall incentive for everyone. But on my small space inside the company, I don't see my contribution directly as a relevant one for those two key incentives. So there is a lack of alignment incentives, which is quite different. And there is a focus on short term. So there is a quarterly review, can be both in the stock market, can be inside the company. There is a yearly review and a yearly closure. So having those type of incentives, it's very difficult to build something in the long run. It's quite focused on short run and the things that I really am able to deliver in short term. So and most of these moves that Alessandro was mentioning, those are bold moves that probably have a valley somewhere in the path that you must cross in order to go to the new chain of mountains. And most of the incentives and the governance of the companies are not aligned with that. And it's not only about financial incentives, so don't mistake me for talking about words there. I'm talking even social incentives. So when inside my company, I'm recognized as the best manager for doing something, in spite of that doesn't translating into any monetary incentive, it's clearly a social incentive that is very focused on short term. So it's tough. Everything is based on silo KPI and short-term presentation of results that actually makes it harder for disalignment across the company. Having time for things like you do on Evolve, giving time to it, it's only for it to grow. It's only possible when you are a founder with a big company. Each one has short-term moves. But that's my perspective on the governance and the alignment.
Brilliant, thank you, Alessandro. Your take?
My take is that we have been talking about alignment, internal alignment, but we need also external alignment, and this, as you're focused more on commerce media and retail, is also about, but that's valid for any type of advertising, is alignment between the buyer and the seller, and without forgetting that, well, first to be closer, and without forgetting that there is good ad tech and martech and bad ad tech and martech. And I always say that there cannot be quality digital advertising without good ad tech, but there always also cannot be good advertising with bad ad tech. So bad ad tech, when I mention bad ad tech, I mean those kind of dynamics where any ad slot is an ad slot. For example, it's where we are talking or living on the delusion of infinite reach with high quality, and that's a delusion. So again, we need more alignment between advertisers and where the advertising appears, so the media owners, and ad tech is the enabler. That I think it's also crucial.
So speaking of AI, Alessandro, and have to touch that. But how is AI then changing that logic today? We haven't even touched YouTube, which was something I thought I was going to ask you. But how is AI changing that logic? And when you have the ed tech companies there, it has to start somewhere, right? That pressure in how you change the incentives. So so potentially we can have let's say a different future. So
Yeah, well, I mean, every sometimes with a laugh and parroting certain marketers, but I used to say with a colleague, every issue, every challenge is a solution opportunity. And I think that the challenge of AI for media owners is a fantastic solution opportunity, providing that they follow their path to uniqueness. There will be a sea of the sameness, of average content, of just about good content, and there would be the opportunity to stand out. And I think that's a huge opportunity. So AI is also an opportunity to improve processes, but as many say, it's also the a danger if you leave everything to AI and you're not providing uniqueness, human uniqueness. I have co-authored recently a handbook on AI integration in the context of media, and looking at thousands of pilot integrations. When they failed, they didn't fail because of the technology. They failed because there was lack of planning, lack of alignment, etc., etc., etc. So at the end of the day, the positive contribution or the negative contribution of AI depends on the human, I think, that is using it. The human, or the human organization.
yeah, I get it. We have Gabriela. Gabriela, really nice. Yeah, ask away.
Yeah, I think I first probably just want to give a couple of observations. I think when this is a really interesting topic, by the way, but when we were kind of going through, I really like the kind of headlines of being unique, understanding your audience. When I'm thinking about marketplaces, I think about that in a way, not necessarily just with retail media, but with like your products, right? And what the sellers are even with data that they're even giving you, and how you then present that on your end store is super important. You know, you need to make sure that the content is actually relevant so that the person that views that product actually wants to purchase it. So I think that's sort of something that kind of came to my mind. And just in general, obviously being within customer success, I'm always thinking.
Can I say, sorry, Gabriela, not to interrupt you, but to build on what you're saying. This is exactly what I meant when I said being closer, the seller and the buyer being closer. That kind of affinity between the content and what is sold, the audience and what is sold, the consistency or the affinity of value, the understanding of the user experience. And that's where we should not let technology hijack it, and technology companies.
Yeah, completely agree. And just adding on to that, when you mentioned about the buyer, the seller, the internal and the external alignment, for me as well, when I think about retail media, and you know, having these conversations with my customers, is very much when you mentioned about just selling an ad space, and that's kind of how you do it wrong, just trying to sell an ad space, but really actually thinking, where is this ad, where is it going to fit on my website, and who is that relevant to? And then the approach being slightly different, because you're focusing on who is my end seller that I actually want to sell this space to. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But I'd love to hear from you both how, like, where do you think that sweet spot is for retailers to create that additional revenue via selling those advertising spots? Like, are they just going to focus on specific brands? Are they going to give it to an option to all of their sellers? Yeah, I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on kind of where you see retailers making the most out of that opportunity.
Yeah. On the retailer and what you call nowadays the retail media, it's a question of also organizing what customers will be impacted for. So it's not an open media, so you probably cannot have Pepsi following Coke advertising. And in that sense, you build partnerships with some of the key suppliers and some of the key products in order to show it the best way you can. And the curation of the advertising is the same as the curation of the assortment. You are unable to carry everything on your shelves. It can be digital, it can be the idea of an endless aisle that was sold somewhere in the early this century is something that doesn't happen. Customers don't go through 2,000 products to buy one detergent and washer for dishwashing. They go through the top 10, if so. So the assortment curation is critical, and you see currently what usually is called the discount chains having quite a upside everywhere. So Mercadona, Lidl, Aldi, because they have a short range of products, and it will be the same on the media. If I go inside the supermarket or on their website, and I'm bombarded by thousands of different products, it is not a nice experience. It's like Alessandro said about the media. It tells me that the supermarket is more interested in the revenues from the suppliers than on my shopping, and providing me with a user interface or shopper experience that actually is agreeable and simple, and that actually pleases me. It's the same with the media. So it's when you move your eyes out of the ball, you probably start losing the game. So the things I saw on retail media was much more building of partnerships, like you see today on when you are talking about podcasters or Instagrammers. They probably cannot move from one product to the next because they lose credibility and trust of their followers. So they keep some partnerships in the long run, and that will be the critical thing. I hope I was clear.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I like that, because the way that I think about marketplaces these days, I agree with you. Everyone, when marketplaces first started coming out, your Amazons, your eBays, it's all about having as many products as possible on there. And, it's dependent on how good your search is, right? It's not really a personalized experience. You go on Amazon, you know what you're searching for, you find it. But you also have lots of different products there. But I think for marketplaces, for me, especially what I'm seeing a bit of a shift on is more towards the curated marketplace. So the thing that I love about a marketplace is that you can trial that until you get it right. So you can add different sellers, you can add different products, see what works with your audience, grow your audience beyond that as you go into new categories and things like that. But I think I like the fact that it's a bit experimental, when you can kind of switch things off, and on, dependent on kind of your audience, and really making sure that the customer is the focus point.
That's the good thing about the digital. You can measure very easily. but one should never forget the long-term measures. So if that attracts you more customers, but they probably more audience, let's say, that doesn't convert, it's not a bad thing. It means that you are starting to attract different type of customers, and then you have to look at your user experience and assortment there. But it's not only about conversion. And the thing I saw in many of the e-commerce that I got to know was like the media when they were click based. You were on the e-commerce, you are conversion based, and that is not the only measurement that you should. The trust should be measured somehow, and it's not easy to measure, but there are trends that you can easily follow. So it's very similar one to the other, because when you actually kind of message that news to have a click from the customer, and the click doesn't correspond exactly to the news, you are building frustration. It's same with e-commerce. So if you are only focusing on the conversion, you probably lose some of the people going around. I'm from the time, so I'm from the time where shopping used to be fun, and not a nightmare trying to find it. Nowadays, looks more like the Stone Age, when you would go out and try to come back alive.
That's true.
There was a period of time in human history where you actually would go out for fun, just for fun, and you could come back without hunting anything, but it would have been fun. Nowadays, you just go out, try to grab whatever you need, and try to come back alive. It's a nightmare, and this is building also. I'm not going into philosophical issues, but it's building the anxiety that everybody feels like. So it's really, we are pushing too much the customer in that sense, and it's becoming hard. And just my
But the
Brilliant.
advantage of retail media and commerce media is that they can build on top, and they're mainly not doing it, build on top of all the mistakes and of the past of traditional media. So there are so many parallels. The need of trust, the kind of infinite availability on one side of content today, and on the other side of products, that being the ones that are the gatekeepers of quality and value of the good user experience. The trap of increasing reach, so buying traffic, the issue that traditional media owners went through, but we are talking about quality ones, where the audience extensions. So my audience is not big enough, so I'll buy traffic in the programmatic open marketplace, resulting in serving the campaign in very low quality websites. I keep banking it's a pet obsession of me. Quality media providing space for retail to expand the retail media and commerce media campaigns into like a quality environment, rather than going out and buying wherever. Yeah, bottom line, the lessons are there. We just need to go and look for them.
Yes.
Nice. Erin, you're there. You're very welcome to ask your question as well. And Gabriela, you're welcome to stay. No worries if you let's just join the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. This is a really incredible session. So thank you, first and foremost. My question is, so I come from the online community space, and for us, engagement is very top of mind. We find that the number one success kind of metric for successful communities is their members engaging with each other. And that keeps their community running for long amounts of time when it's almost self-serving. Like people can gain value through their own content and interactions together. And so with that, I'm curious to know how you think about media to retain and engage people to the brand who's hosting the media, and if you have any strategies or thoughts around engagement.
Is who wants to go?
Please.
Yeah, well, I think I touched on it earlier. Every audience is different. So there are no blueprints. The only blueprint is to listen to the audience, to work, let's talk about alignment. I see a company, and a media company in particular, having an overall objective. It could be like in 3 years away, 5 years away. Nowadays, it's probably more likely 3 years. Is the overall objective? It's not a set one, can be tweaked, but it's the long term. And then you will have 3 to 5 intermediate objectives in different areas, all rolling up to that end objective. It will touch different areas. So what needs to happen in order for that objective to be reached? And it seems that I'm going off a tangent, but it's very relevant to what I was saying. Then in this 3 to 5 intermediate objectives, like shorter term objectives, we cannot use blueprints. We need to come up with hypotheses and testing these hypotheses. And that is the same. It's valid for engagement, for new features, for new types of content. Always also keeping this feedback, two-way feedback channel open.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Alessandro.
I think
David,
I think the brands will be curated, as I said, by the media. So there will be kind of also the ones that make more sense for the targets I'm serving, for the purposes I'm serving. So the media brands will have different proposals for different targets. So if I have news that are more local, I will have probably brands that are more local in that sense, in that region. If I have news that are more on the sportive side, and I also cover that, I'll probably have something more related to that, and that target is more engaged. And if I have just some entertainment on my media, that can be infotainment or it can be pure fiction, I will have brands that will follow, and that actually content will be king. I mean, the newest one, Stranger Things, was a huge driver of Netflix again. So content keeps on being the thing that actually drives engagement, so they can go after that target somehow. And when you're thinking about that, everyone would be consuming just the same content. When you look at the streaming businesses, they are actually producing in many countries very good fiction. So it's not a generic approach. There are nowadays I see Polish serials, I see Turkish movies, I see German serials, I see stuff from everywhere, and it's not curated by some media company that actually was only providing to me the things that they would see in Cannes or in Vegas, and they would buy the big American stuff over there. Nowadays, I can choose, and I talk to my friends, and we watch something that is going on in Denmark, and that is quite new in that sense. So the generic approach that one probably used to have, because there was no tools to go into personalization or segmentation. Nowadays, with the tools that we have, we can probably go deeper into that segmentation, and inside that segmentation, with that context, the brands will be relevant to that segment. I'm not expecting to see diapers advertising at this point in time of my life. So I'll be expecting to see other stuff.
Thank you. I think just to Aaron's point, and maybe a different angle and observation that I've been seeing, at least in the role of the store, D2C in Brazil. Now there's a marketplace called Magalu, Magazine Luiza, which is very large. And what they decided to do is to they open like a flagship store. It used to be a massive bookstore. So this bookstore broke. The company went bankrupt. So they took advantage of that space to create more like an experiential space for their customers. So it's a flagship store with the purpose of connecting people. Like it's a store, but it also serves their community, which is something that I've always wondered, like why this bookstore isn't doing more of it. Like the previous owner, it was a company called Cultura, and I mean, for me, it's obvious. You're not just there to sell books, but you could be having mini theaters. You could connect your community. You could have a potential, like say, influencers there. That so by doing so, you would associate your brand with them and attract people to the store. So you could have food store. And I think in that sense, and Aaron, I'm not sure if that makes sense to what you asked, but at least in retail, I think yes, you have a brand promise, but the physical world makes a lot of sense. But you in the physical world, you need to create a space where you can also foster or create these opportunities for people to connect, because again, it goes back to community and then network effects, and then people are not just there to buy, but your space could also serve other purposes. So that's kind of like how we're building Evolve. I think you join the group, and then we are connecting people, and then eventually people might join our private club or sponsor some of the events. That I mean, this has been working. So I'm not saying I know it all, but it's the kind of like the approach we adopted here. And now, of course, technology in Mighty Networks, which is something we spoke about yesterday, and we have there. I think it can serve that. It can become even more like a powerful catalyst. But I think at the end, it boils down to connecting humans. No.
And what you said, Carlos, it's
Yeah.
it's absolutely true, and it's a great example. It's how about trying this, trying that? That's the kind of hypothesis that I was talking about. And then you need, then once you have all these hypotheses aligned, prioritize them and run experiments so that you can really optimize your resources. It's again, it's all aligned and interconnected. Even these small experiments need to be tied to the overall goal.
Good. Go ahead, Erin. Thanks,
No,
Alessandro.
that very helpful insight and lots of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So this was an amazing conversation. Erin and Gabriela, it was the first time officially, I think you joined, but this is what we do on a weekly basis. Alessandro, this took a we diverge a little, but I think that's what always happens.
Well, yes, but also because we don't work in silos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like to think we're lateral thinkers of sorts.
Exactly.
So really appreciate you all. David, thank you so much. David, we'll do an expert session with you as well soon. So Alessandro, if who's not in the community, I'm always trying to, when I remember, to mention you and to connect you. But for whomever is watching this on LinkedIn now, what's the best way for them to find you, to know more about your work, and how they can connect you and learn more about the incredible work you do in media?
Thank you. Is this a question?
That's the question. Yes, indeed.
Okay, sure. Well, on LinkedIn, that's my name. There is another one, I think, with that name, but in my picture, I will be without the glasses. So I'll help you by taking them off. I write a newsletter. It's newsletter.notjustads, which sounds like ads, but it's also my initials, not just adz.com, newsletter.notjusadz.com. And we can keep the conversation going.
Sweet. That was amazing. Thank you, Alessandro. David, thanks so much for joining us today. Yeah, thank you all. Gabriela, Erin, and everybody who's joined us. Lovely seeing you all today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Very good. Thank you.